So welcome to the third night. Tonight we're going to finish up some pieces that I missed for the IEP. We're also going to go over how you start initial. We're also going to go over transfers and all the add action items. Okay? So we've got lots to do. All right, so in the goals section, what we forgot to talk about is what's really, really important, progress monitoring. So reporting is what we do at the same time that we do for every reg ed kid. Semester, twice a year, quarterly, 4 times a year. But progress monitoring is when you want to put your progress monitoring data within the IEP itself. So if you scroll down to where it says progress monitoring and you check collect detailed progress monitoring, what you do is you're only going to be putting data in, just strict numbers, okay? So the numbers are what you're actually going to add to progress monitoring. The cool thing about progress monitoring is that when you put all your data points in, it creates this beautiful graph right on top of your progress report so the parents can visually see the progress the student's making. It also gives you a goal line. So if you say the student's at 20% and you want to get them to 60, it gives this goal line of where the kid is, and it'll actually give you feedback whether they're at the goal line or they're on their approaching or where they need to be. So progress monitoring is something that we really, really want people to do. I'm not requiring you to do it in Enrich. If you have your own data collection tools that you use in progress monitoring on goals that you do and you feel comfortable with those written hard copy ones, that's fine. And it does take some time to get used to this system. So I would encourage you to pick maybe one goal on a kid starting off and then start building more progress monitoring pieces, because if you put all your progress monitoring in, if you put all that progress monitoring in, it's going to give you that great goal and that feedback that you really need. Okay? So it's awesome. I'm going to wait to get these other people started.
I have a question about that then.
Yes.
So you've completed your IEP for that year, but now your progress monitoring, are you putting the data back into the current IEP constantly so that it feeds into the next one?
So let me explain what you're asking your question. So the question was, when do we do the progress monitoring, basically? You're not going to progress monitor on anything that's been finalized unless you absolutely want to go back in and admin edit and add those pieces. What you really want to do is you want to, on all the IEPs that you guys create from here on out, you can choose a progress monitoring. And you're going to put data in for that goal throughout the IEP year. Just for that goal throughout the year. And you can choose how much progress monitoring you want to do. Excuse me. You can do it weekly, twice a week, every other week, once a month, so on and so forth. And you can figure out which tools you want to use to progress monitor that data, put that data. But all you're doing is, it'll give you like a little warning and a probe, and it'll say, hey, you've got a progress monitoring probe that's due, and you just click on enter, and you just put your number in. That's all you do. So it's almost always numeric. There is other choices that you can choose, but I would say the best way is numeric to give good data to show that visual. Okay? So those of you that just jumped in, I'd like you to get back into the IEP that we were working on last night, because I forgot to show you about progress monitoring. So that's why we're going over that right now. So in the very bottom of each goal, and that's where I want you to jump to, it'll say progress monitoring. And if you check mark collect detailed progress monitoring data at the goal level. Now those students that are in the SSN program that are going for co-alt or DLM now, oh, yours got finalized? You were able to finalize yours? Awesome. You can go view details, because we couldn't finalize ours. Okay. So just do view details and get to that part. So you can also progress monitor on the objective level. Do you see where it says collect data at the goal level? That's because we only have a goal. Hey, Annika Barton, I thought you weren't coming. This is Annika Barton. She's a coordinator for early childhood education. She was also my work wife. She and I both did this job of Enrich, IEP specialist, when Enrich first rolled out in our district. So she's a trainer just like I am, and soon to be Rebecca too. So she's a great resource for ECE people. So here's your go-to person. So we're talking about progress monitoring because I forgot to bring that up in the goals section yesterday. So if there are objectives, it would give you the option to collect data on the objective level, but I don't have objectives, so that's why it's only giving me a choice to collect data on the goal level. So if I check that box that says collect progress monitoring data, then I'm going to select a probe type. Now we have some probes that are already built in, as you can see, but if you don't like any of those probes, I want you to choose other, but if you've noticed, there's two others there. There's an other, and then there's other ... You actually have to choose the other ... in order to rename whatever probe you'd like to do. Okay, so say we're doing math, and I've got a probe, I got my own rubric and my own probe that I'm going to pick. So if I click other ... it tells me to give me a name. I'm going to say math rubric. I'm going to make it up. Okay? What is the data type? Of course, the best is numeric. So I would pick numeric. Then it's going to say, all right, what was the score on the day that I wrote this IEP on July? Say if the score was, he's at 35% on July 1. And you guys don't have to do this. I just want to show you how to do this. And my target is 75. When do I want to do it? Do I want to put in daily progress monitoring, or do I want to put in weekly? And if I say weekly, see how that it's showing you, all right, this is where we have to go. This is our goal line. This is how it's going to be broken up from IEP start date to IEP end date. If I say every 2 weeks, I can monitor that goal every 2 weeks. Okay? And it's as simple as putting those pieces in when you're progress monitoring. And when you finalize that goal, what will come up in 2 weeks from the time that you finalize it, it'll give you a reminder, hey, you got to put some data in there, and you just click on the enter button and you put actually your data in. John?
So if you put 2 weeks, could you enter more data?
You sure can. If you put in 2 weeks, can you enter more data? Absolutely. You absolutely can. You're not stuck to that 2 week window. But if you go past the 2 week, it's going to show up red and keep reminding you that it's due. By the way, they haven't fixed it. It will continue to ask for dates during the summer, but as soon as you come back in the fall and you enter in that first score, all those reminders and all that stuff will go away and it'll reset for you for the fall. So try one on one kid and get that started. And then the more familiar you are with it, the better. I just think it's really cool that you can have your data be entered right in. Okay? The other thing that I just want us to check, because Rebecca was checking homework last night and she noticed that we didn't do a great job on our accommodations. They weren't all matching. And I know some of you were with Kim last night, and I don't know if she went over the whole accommodations, all four have to match. So let's just pull it up and make sure that your accommodations look like mine so that everybody gets 100% on their homework. So remember that in the consideration of special factors, we wrote in the assistive technology part, we wrote that, whoa, I just totally jumped, sorry. We said use of computer for writing tasks. Does everybody have that in their assistive technology consideration of special factors section? Check your IEPs. Make sure it's all there. Is yours there?
What if I should have a different assistive tech? So I'm not a computer.
As long as you chose that and the same one and they kept everything else matches, then that's fine. Andy?
So I picked a new score for the baseline. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're back on progress writing, okay.
And I put in 25%.
Okay.
And it's red. Take the percent.
Take the percent sign out. It just likes numbers. Yay!
I did say.
Yay, you.
And guys, on this one, what we're gonna do right now with Jennifer, if everyone can just follow along, just stop whatever else you're doing and just follow along. It's gonna take 5 minutes, but we really want this to be consistent, and this will help you out a ton in the future.
Because we, like I said last time, we had, what, 180 people that have non-compliant IEPs because what they wrote in the accommodations, because they were not matching. So if you have some kind of use of computer for writing tasks, that's what I want you to check now to make sure you have it there in the using assistive technology. Everybody's got that written? Can I go forward? Yes? Yes, I'm seeing head nods. Yes? Jamie, yes? Okay. So then we got to make sure that it matches down in the accommodations box. So we're going to jump to accommodations. And then you got to make sure that you have it there. Does everybody have it written there? We chose one from our text assist, which is extended time when we wrote reading only. And then I wrote use of computer for writing tasks. In writing, I'm specifying the subject area. So everybody should have at least those two or something. You could have chose a different one, but at least the writing one. Everybody has something like that?
Extended time reading.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got that? And you got the use of writing? Use of computer for writing tasks? Everybody's got that too? Mark, you got it?
So this is under the accommodations section.
Yes, in the accommodations box. Mm-hmm. Don't worry about all the other stuff that I copied over from last year, but just look at those first two. Okay? And then what also has to match is the assessment participation. So if I go down to my assessment participation, then I checked response and timing, and I came down, and what it should look like is this. It should say reading. Well, I chose extended time, so I have reading, extended time, and writing I have word prediction. And then I have it the same thing in the state assessment. Reading I have extended time, writing I have word prediction again. Done.
If social studies and science require reading, why would we not do extended?
You could, but okay, so that's a great question. I would typically, if she said science and social studies require reading, why wouldn't we choose that? I probably would in an IEP.
Okay.
I would, but what I want you to understand is whatever you write in that accommodations box, if you say extended time in reading, writing, math, blah, 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 and you put them all, you have to choose them all in this area.
Okay.
And I was trying to reduce the amount of time and picking and choosing that you had to do for this assignment, so that's why I only did reading. But you're right, if this kiddo struggles with reading and needs extended time for that, obviously you would need it for social studies and science. Andy?
So I put
Wait.
in
Guys are gonna get better at it.
done today. So I put in under writing, regular, and time accommodation, there's no word prediction in mine.
So up above, you have to choose, remember we talked about, we have to choose that box above that opens up those menu items. So if you look just above, you should have chosen response accommodations and timing accommodations. Because response will open all the response accommodations available. If you choose on timing, it's opening all the timing accommodations available. If you open setting, it's going to open all the setting accommodations. But without checking those boxes, you won't be able to have those options come up in your menu. You see that now, Andy? Yay!
So would you ever have a situation where you didn't click any state assessments and you clicked one district assessment because the kid
No.
needed extended time on just that one assessment?
No.
I would say no.
Annika says yes.
It depends upon the age of the student.
Depends on the age of the student, for
So the
sure.
answer is you mark the assessments that are relevant to the age of the student.
Right, so 3 to 5-year-olds aren't taking any state assessments. So therefore, they're only getting district assessments, and so therefore they wouldn't have any. But most kids that are in 3rd grade and above will probably have them in both.
What about like just on the SAT?
If they're on the SAT, College Board looks to see on all sections of the IAP that they're identified, or it's difficult to get the accommodations on the SAT.
And don't we have to be in practice with all these accommodations?
Yes, we have to show that we're using those on a regular basis. Absolutely. Okay, so that's the IEP stuff that I wanted to go over. Okay, so let's go over amending IEPs. You do not need to go, this is not going to be an I do, we do. I just want you to pay attention because you're going to be getting many more practices for this, okay? Let me go back to my home page. Especially when we get to level matriculation time. So I just want you to pay attention and see what I do. All right. So I want to show you a couple of features. Mary Jo has a yellow line showing up under her goals. And it says December 13th, that's 2013, not the 13th of December, progress report due. Okay? So this is progress reporting. And so you'll see the yellow line there. If you don't see a yellow line, a report is not due. And if it's supposed to be due, then maybe you have not selected the correct progress reporting period. So you probably want to go into that IEP and make sure that it's showing the correct period. Those of you that are reporting out now in October for quarterly, all your kids should be showing up with that. The only reason why they wouldn't be showing up is if there's a draft of an IEP open, because you haven't finalized that IEP yet, so you wouldn't have that coming up. So to report out on progress, I'm going to click on that little line that says enter. And when I click on enter, it's going to bring up the progress report. And basically what you're going to do is choose the progress reporting period that you have. And your choices are insufficient progress, goal met, progress made, did not work on this goal. So if the student is insufficient progress, then one of the expectations is that I'm going to write a comment in 2013 in that same corresponding box, the remarks box, giving that parent some data of why they're not making that goal. It could be narrative, but I'd really like data there. It could be both, okay? To say this is why they're not making insufficient progress. And then to print the progress report, you can print from the print icon that's up in the far right-hand corner, okay? You want to save it, and then you can also print it from when you click on, oops, yes, leave this. There's a print icon from progress goal progress. When you're in there, you can also click on the print icon. Print progress report. Okay? So that's progress reporting. I'm going to show you how to amend an IEP. Some of you might actually have to amend an IEP before you actually get to level matriculation time, so I wanted to show you how to amend it. There are two sections of an amend IEP. You're actually going to physically amend this IEP, and then you're also going to fill out an IEP amendment PWN to document what you're changing and why. I typically like to start with the IEP amendment PWN, so I'm documenting all the things I want to change, and then I refer back to my PWN to say, okay, what did I say I was going to change? And then go to the IEP and physically change it, okay? So where we find the IEP amendment PWN, I have three buttons here. Which one do you think I'm going to pick? Add action, add IEP, and special ed? Add action. Add action is correct. So I'm going to add action. I'm going to open my IEP amendment PWN. Again, you don't have to do this with me. And you can only do it when you have a finalized IEP. So when we open the amendment, the first section is which section or sections of the IEP will be amended. My date of this amendment, I'm just going to put in today's date or yesterday's date. We built in text assist to help you because we do a lot of these amendments at level matriculation time, so we try to build in some text assist to help you. Typically at a level matriculation, you are going to amend the present levels of performance to update before that kid goes to the next school. You might amend goals, you might amend service delivery, most likely, services and least restrictive environment. So that's why we have that text assist there for you, okay? But I'm going to only amend services. So I'm not going to pick all that, I'm just going to say services, okay? What are the proposed changes? Again, we added a lot of text assist here to help guide you with the level matriculation. Present levels were updated to reflect current level. Accommodations were changed. Goal X was changed. Service delivery, we kind of try to build that in so you have the documentation to let the parent know this is what I'm changing. They need to know exactly what you're changing to the IEP. Okay? I'm just going to click the services one. Service delivery. Service delivery was added to reflect the service delivery of Madeline at new school. And then I would describe the services. Rationale. Whoops. Sorry. The rationale for the changes. Again, text assist is built in. Madeline is transitioning to school X. Whatever, you'd put in the new school. Other options, you always have to identify other options you considered and other factors you considered. Now this is the most important part. Say, for example, in a high school, middle school, the kid's schedule changes. And all of a sudden, they're in self-contained a lot more. And you're going to have to amend that IEP. His IEP is not due till April. And you're like, yikes, his schedule changed in January, and this LRE is not correct. And he's getting more services than we have indicated on the IEP, and I'm going to need to amend this IEP. But I don't feel like having a whole other IEP. I'm wondering if the mom's going to be cool with me just amending this IEP to add this stuff. So the question there is, does the district wish to implement the agreement not to convene in the IEP amendment? So usually I call or I email a parent, hey, I'm not changing the LRE drastically, we just need to move this piece in, that's why I want to amend it. Now if I'm drastically changing the LRE and I'm drastically changing those services, it requires an annual. But if I'm doing a minor change, I'll call the parent or email, are you okay with me changing the IEP without us meeting? And the mom will email me back, sure, go ahead. So in this scenario, do I wish to implement the agreement not to have it? I would say yes. If the parent says, no, I actually have to be there and sit down with you and talk about this amendment, then you would answer no, okay? So I would put yes in this scenario. Mom's okay with me changing the IEP. So I say yes. I write down my name as the case manager. The date I'm notifying my team, I'm going to tell them about the change I made because it might affect them, and I'm the one responsible for notifying them. This district team members section, this is typically when we have a transition meeting. These are who is this affecting at the new school. So you would write the case manager or team leader from the new school that kid's transitioning to. But if it's within my school and my amendment's happening for my school, I usually don't write anybody there. Okay? And then I just finalize my outcome. And I finalize. Okay? That has to be documented. Then what I do after I'm there, now I'm going to go back to the actual IEP itself and make my physical change. So I go into View Details to open the IEP. And what will pop up is two choices I have at the top. We kind of talked about this. What's the difference between amend and admin edit? Everybody remember? Andy? She's got a mic. She's special. Yeah. Admin edit, amend.
Okay, so an admin edit is I can't type or spell.
Yes, so
True that. So, oh, somebody else reads it and goes, Andy, you've got all these things spelled wrong. I can go in and admin edit to correct typing the wrong dates, typing the wrong number, or typing a word wrong.
mm-hmm.
The admin edit is is actually changing the IEP and
Amend.
amend is changing the IEP and the meaning of what's in it.
Right, and the difference between an amend and an admin edit is an admin edit overwrites. Good job, Andy. It overwrites what you had, so you have no record. Amend, you'll have a record of what it was and what it is. So it's really important you click on amend when you're actually changing a significant piece of this IEP, or just changing the IEP, other than spelling. So then I click on amend, and what it's going to do is it's going to pull up a new draft of that IEP, okay? So when I go to amend, I now can just put my physical changes on this IEP. So if I wanted to add a service, I'd come to add a service. I can change my pieces here. I want to add a service, and I want it to start. I'm going to do some social emotional skills development. I'm going to choose my mental health provider. I'm also going to put it direct outside, and I want this to start in January of 2014. I know this is an old IEP. Save it. Now, remember what we had to do yesterday? I want to see if you remember this. I'm going to say minutes and weekly. What did I have to do down in this least restrictive environment to pull in that new LRE? You guys remember? What would I have to do to the LRE to pull in that new January service?
We had to click on the add placement.
Yes, we did. Good. Yes, we had to click on that add placement date to pull in that new LRE. So then I'm going to click on add placement date, and I'm going to bring in that January of 2015. Did I do the 14th? I did the 14th, didn't I?
Yeah, and it kicked it back to December.
It might. So then I have the same LRE, so I haven't really changed it. And then I would just hit finalize. Okay. Now I want to show you what it looks like, and so that you know that an IEP has been amended or not. Because it's important for you guys to look at this. Because the progress reporting period I just entered in for December will not carry forward into the new amended IEP. And it's not something I can control, but that's what does happen. So if I hit close, now if I open up this IEP, you will notice the revision. You see at the top? It says revisions. 1219 was the original, 10.8, which was today. So if I go back, I can click on that blue line of 1219 and pull up that IEP from December and see what it was and now what it is. That's the nice thing about amend. Any questions about amendments? John, thought you had a special mic. It wasn't working. Okay.
So just to correct what you're saying, so you'd have to print the whole new IEP, you have to insert pages, you should put that as the new one.
That's the new IEP.
And then, sorry, perhaps Mr. Elliott, but on the progress monitoring, you can go back in any time and change that. Can you? If you did a miss, you put 12 instead of 22 or something.
Yes.
So you wouldn't have to amend or
You
anything
could,
for
no,
that?
you don't have to
Okay,
do that
okay.
because that's on a separate piece.
Okay.
Yes, you could change the actual data that you put in if you made that my mistake.
And speaking of dates and being careful that we put them in order.
Yes, we'll get to that. All right. So, good with the amendment piece? All right. So, let's go really quick to your practice IEPs, please, and find that one beautiful student that is not special ed.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes.
On the after you're done with an amendment, you send a copy to the parents.
Absolutely.
And is there anything about a paper copy versus electronic, or it's
You
just
can
what
send
they
a PDF.
prefer? And then do you make document? Do you have to go back in and say anything about where you did that and like parent log information?
No, no.
Okay.
You just send a copy of that IEP PWN and the new IEP.
And then one other question: in that PWN place in the IEP, what else is that used for?
That is
prior
only for
written-
you, that's only used for the amendment, the IEP.
Okay, so nothing should necessarily, because I get all the time, well, you can put that in prior written notice. And I was like, what does that even, I didn't know what that really meant. So that just is really for amendments only,
No.
in that section of the IEP.
No, thank you for bringing up what is a prior written notice. And that was something that is, people are often confused about what a prior written notice is. It typically is a summary of what you discussed in the IEP meeting. That's what a prior written notice really should be. It's really emphasizing it's a legal piece that we have to include to make sure that everybody at the IEP meeting is on the same page. So it's a summary of all the things that were discussed, things that were considered, things that happened in the IEP, that to make sure we're giving prior written notice to the parent that this is what we talked about, this is what we agreed upon, this is what's going to happen. And you have to provide a copy of that to the parent. Best practice, and I think legally, you need to provide that to the parent before they leave the IEP meeting. Like, this is what we talked about. This is what we said we're going to do. And that prior written notice should go to the parent before they leave. Rebecca?
I remember in the past, the only use we had of prior written notice was when the parents didn't attend the meeting, and you had to
No,
send
that's
them
not true.
notice.
That's
but now it's
legally, you have to provide prior written notice on anything. That's why there's one for an amendment. There's an IEP. I mean, there's prior written notice embedded in almost all these. It feels very redundant. It's the law. It's because the law specifies the parent needs to be understanding what you guys discussed. I don't know how many IEP meetings you've been in, but I've been in meetings where people talk about all this stuff, and then I go to look the draft IEP, and it looks nothing like what we talked about. So that's why a prior written notice, our prior written notice, was embedded in the law, because people would say one thing at the meeting and do something else on the actual IEP itself.
It's a misnomer, that's part of the problem. It should say,
Past notice. I know. Attica?
It's actually, though it seems like a bit of a misnomer, in the spirit of the way that the law was written, it says, we have the meeting, I provide you prior written notice, and upon prior written notice, action may commence. So we have the meeting, we talk about it, I document and provide it to you, and then the IEP can take place. I came from a district that the meeting and the prior written notice, there had to be a 10-day window before the start date of the IEP, because that was the time that the parent had to change or come back with,
Right.
that is not appropriate, we still need to change it before the IEP commences. That is why your start date of your IEP is not the same as your meeting date, for that very reason, because you have to provide the family prior notice before IEP changes commence. That's the spirit of where it came from.
Yep. Thank you, Annika. So glad you're here tonight. All right. So everybody's got their IEP of the kiddo that's got 3 tabs, right? All right. So we're going to start at initial. I'm going to kick it off for you, and then this is your homework. Okay? So we have a student that has 3 tabs. To kick off an initial, let's kind of talk about the different steps of an initial. What should happen before we start an initial in this IEP system? What do you think? What should be happening? What's that? Consent will be in there, but what should I do before I start? Richie? RTI, yes. RTI should be happening before we even get to referral, right? Should be happening. What is one case that may not be happening? Why RTI might be skipped?
Because a parent would request that you test their child.
Right, parents requested, and legally, if parent requests, we have to test. Doesn't mean that you can't talk a parent out of it. If you have some really good data and say, I just want to inform you, your student's going to miss a lot of class when I evaluate, and I've got this piece, and I've got this stuff, and we really don't see what you're looking at, but you legally are allowed to do that, and we'll do it, okay? We still have to go through the 7-step process even when a parent requests. All right, so which one of these buttons do you think we're going to pick? Start program, view history, log services, view service log to start a initial. Hence start, yes. All right, so we're going to do start program. Everybody with me. This is an I do, we do. Start program. The program is special ed. We do not have RTI or what was the other one? What was the other choice? Part C, we don't have that. So we have special ed, and the item is consider eligibility for special education. And click on next. All this is doing is it's kicking off the process in Enrich. There's actually no print document for this. It literally is date driven. Okay? So back to our summative assessment. What is our summative assessment for our initial? Somebody look on that for me. Oh, I love that date, 7-1. So we're going to kick off this initial 7-1. And then we're going to go to 7-1 again as our end date. And all we're going to do is complete start with referral. That's all we're going to do.
What did you say about date?
They're both 7-1. 7-1, 7-1. So if you did it right, you should get that. 7-1, 7-1. All right, does everybody finalize that and everybody has got a consent and a referral? What do you think I should pick? Consent or referral? Which one should I pick out first? Negative. Why?
Well, they have to be referred before you can even think about wanting to get consent.
Correct. We have to have our referral meeting and gather up all our data and hopefully our RTI stuff and gather all that stuff and go, okay, guys, let's take a look. Do we need to go to a referral? And if we do, let's document all that information. We have parents in our district that shop schools. And if we don't fill out this referral and document all the things that we did, then it can always get stuck to another team to have to start it all over again. But if we started the process and document everything in the referral, when that parent goes to that new school and says, hey, I want you to test, and they've gone through that, or whatever, they put them up for referral again, we have that documentation for that other school to go, ooh, look at all this other great data, okay? So the referral part is basically you'll click create the referral, and we're going to gather and review data, except if you're an ECE person. And even ECE people do it differently anyway, right?
Child Find's the only one that uses the Child Find.
Yep.
If you're not Child Find, don't pick it.
Yep. So my start date is 7-1 again. And then you would create a new meeting. And I believe that meeting date is also 7-1. Is that what our summative says? Yes. Yeah, so 7-1 again. Trying to keep it easy and simple. The meeting notice was sent 7-1. Purpose of this meeting, the weirdest thing is that it actually is not a choice. So you have to click on add option and write in referral. It's because other districts skip over the referral, and we do not. After you type in the word referral, skip down to yes, no, it's not a standalone meeting, so no. So I just typed in under where all these purposes are, I clicked on add new option, and I typed in the word referral. Okay, procedural safeguards is also 7-1. Keep going down. That's because we're not going to fill all that out.
We're not going to fill all what out.
Just skip down to procedural safeguards to 7-1. So in the special ed referral, this is who made the referral. It could be gen ed teacher, it could be SET team, it could be the parent, it could be the RTI team. You can make that up. I'm just going to type the word text, doesn't matter. I'm going to use 7-1 again for my data referral. Method of referral, you can even say email, or you could say meeting, or you could say parent, you could say parent came in, whatever you want, however the referral came through. If English is spoken in the home, you would say yes. If you'd say no, it actually gives you a lot of choices for different languages, and they even have an option that you can add your own language. Okay? So I can add Pig Latin if I wanted to. All right, I'm going to delete that. All right. So I'm just going to say yes. So this is the meat of the referral, and it basically says describe what strategies you've done with the student. This is where your RTI data can come in. I don't expect you to retype all RTI. If you have RTI already gathered in documents somewhere else, you can say see attached for the RTI data. Parent background information, medical information, other pieces, you can put all that information. You want to gather up as much data as you possibly can for this referral. This is what informs you of whether or not you need to go to testing or not. Okay? If you answer the question, and for our purposes you can just type in the word text, you actually don't have any of these fields that you are required to fill out, which is kind of weird, but it is. If the student ever had special ed services and you said yes here, a new box opens that says describe the prior education, special ed, like what was happening before. If you answer no, that box goes away. Then they want you to say, okay, now tell me, what are the educational concerns? Why is this going to referral? I'm going to type text in. Describe any of the behavioral concerns that you have. Again, I'd type text in. Any medical information that might be pertinent, you would put there. Students' interests and strengths, I'm just typing the word text down all the way through. What are the team's recommendations for the referral? Okay? And then we get to the very bottom. Now you'll notice you have some choices there. All right, you've talked about this kid, you've looked at all the data, and you go, you know what, we need to evaluate. This kid needs to go to evaluation. Or you could say, evaluate, no new information needed. When would I do that?
When they're transferring testing information from out of.
Yeah, you both were on the same spot. When I don't need, if I'm looking at initial placement, and what if that kid went to Children's and got a full workup? And you get that from Children's, you're like, ooh, all right, that looks pretty good. Don't think I need any more data. Then you would choose evaluation, no new student, no information needed. I don't need to do any more testing. I got enough right here to qualify this kid potentially. No evaluation needed at this time. When would I check that? When would I check that?
Mom's going to Children's.
When you're, well, no. When we look at the referral, we go, this kid does not need to be referred. You would answer no referral at this time. And we also have an exited district because we start this process a lot and kids move. And we needed to be able to have a choice for you to say, oh, they're gone. Okay? For our purposes, we're going to choose evaluate. Now what step would we do? Consent, right? We don't need to do this consent because we've already done a consent, right? We already know how to do consent. We filled one out for the re-eval, right? Looks exactly the same. So this is where your homework starts. Here's a quiz. You finalize this consent. What's going to kick out? Well, let's find out. Because I want you to see that. So let's do it together. We'll do it quick. So we're going to hit next. You don't have to do it very fast. I'm going to do it fast, so don't pay attention if you don't want to get confused. I'm wicked fast. I'm going to fill it out so you can see what kicks out. You can go at your own sweet pace. Remember to choose 2 areas to evaluate. That's part of your homework. Okay, you have to say yes, consent was granted on this consent form and the date you received it. When you fill out the consent form, unlike the re-eval, you have to say consent received. And unlike the re-eval, you actually have to write down the name of the person who actually signed consent. What happens as soon as that person signs consent? That's right. You start testing. How much time do you have? 60 days, right? You have 60 days to get that testing done. So the clock starts not when you receive it, but when the parent signs it.
No, backwards.
Oops. Not when the parent signs it, but when you receive it. Thank you.
Say it again, the whole thing.
So the parent signs it on a Friday. You don't get it into school till Monday. That's when the clock starts is Monday. That's when you got consent was received. You cannot get a verbal consent over the phone for an initial. It must be in writing. Okay? See, it's a good thing you're here, Annika. Jacking people up here. All right, so so what if the parents refuse? You're done. You can't move forward if a parent refuses consent, right? What happens if the consent was never received or returned? You're also done. Can't do anything until you get that consent received, okay? So I'm going to say 7-1 again. Okay. So after I get my consent, look what pops up. How is this different from the re-eval? We have a pending IEP, pending consent for initial provision of services, pending initial eval, and eligibility. What's different?
The consent.
For
Initial.
right, initial provision of services. Is that in order? No. Would I write the IEP first? No. Okay, see how they come up in random order? Just pay attention to that, okay? Most of these pieces we've done already, right? But let's talk about what order in which we would do them. What would we do first?
The initial evaluation.
Do the evaluation first.
And then you would have the eligibility.
Eligibility second. And then consent. Very important that you have the parent sign consent for initial provision of services. If they leave that meeting without signing it, you're done with the meeting. You cannot discuss the IEP until that parent signs consent. Some parents will push you and say, well, I want to hear what you're going to offer. Yeah, this is not a buffet, not a menu. You don't get to pick and choose. I want that and not this. We'll discuss the IEP once consent is signed. And so these dates all have to be in order. Rebecca had 3 or 4 emails today. Annika and I had 5 million when we were IEP support specialists that people are saying, I can't finalize this IEP. I got all the documents done. Well, they got them done, but they didn't all date them before the IEP meeting. You must finalize the evaluation. You must finalize the eligibility. You must finalize and receive the consent. And then you hold your IEP meeting. All those dates have to be before. If I'm having this IEP meeting on the 19th, I better have dates for all of those things that I finalized before the 19th. Okay? Every date, beginning and ending, has to be before the IEP date or it will not let you finalize. Okay? Very important that you fill out that consent for initial provision of services. So I'm going to open that up just so you can see that, because this will be your homework to work on, finish this entire initial evaluation. But let's just take a look at this consent. So a consent for initial provision of services basically will have your form that indicates why the services are recommended, what those services are going to be based on what evaluation that you did. Again, if you did a really nice job of that summary, remember we talked about that summary? You copy and paste that summary right in there. What were the factors and options that were considered? And then the parent has to sign. And then after they sign, what do you have to do? So signature page is what? Upload it. Have to upload the signature. Yep. So in an initial, how many signatures are you going to have? So you got the signature from the consent for initial provision of services, right? That's one. What other signatures do we get?
You're gonna need
IEP, we get a signature, and what's the last one? The eligibility. 3 signature pages on an initial, 2 for a reeval, and 1 for just an IEP annual. Okay? 3, 2, 1.
You list them again for the initial, we're supposed to know.
Consent for initial provision of services is 1 signature page. Eligibility is another signature page, and the IEP is also another signature page.
That is the signatures you'd have from that meeting. It is not all the signatures from the initial process.
Right. Because you would have a signature for the consent to evaluate too, and you might even get a signature for the referral meeting. Okay? All right. So that is going to be your homework to finish those processes, and we will be checking that homework later. So now I want to talk about add action. All right. So Scott is a lucky one. He gets to do a behavior intervention plan and an FBA. So he's going to create his homework from his documents. He's going to go to add action and he's going to select behavior intervention plan. But if you're writing a behavior intervention plan, this is where you'd find it under add action. The consent for initial provision of services, never choose it from the add action. You saw it kicked out. The process is set up so it kicks out appropriately, so never pull it from here. You would never pull a consent for initial evaluation from here either, because it kicks out automatically. Consent for Medicaid reimbursement is what you do at an initial. You want to print that out to see if potentially the student might be eligible for Medicaid.
Or if the student becomes eligible for Medicaid, or if there's a significant change in placement.
And you'll know typically if that student is going to be eligible. But you want to have those forms with you when you're in those meetings to see if that would.
initial, you said?
For an initial, always, because you always ask that question at an initial. There also is a notification of Medicaid benefits that's down below that you need to also provide to the parent.
Just at an initial or every meeting?
Initials
like
always,
annual?
because you never know when they're adding in. And those conditions that Annika talked about. If there's a change, or what was the other one? I don't deal with Medicaid that much.
Or if they become eligible for
Or if
Medicaid.
they all,
No,
yeah, if they just become eligible.
The Medicaid consent, the way that the Colorado law is written, is that it's a one-time consent. So that's why we say get it at the initial, and it covers the entire life of the IEP period. So I'm talking 3 to 21.
Yeah, we only need to get it once. That's why we always want to do it at initial. Because if we get it there, we don't
Okay.
have to worry
That's
about
why I was
updating
just
it.
wondering
Yeah.
if it was something you were supposed to offer, take to every meeting.
No.
Okay.
Once you
So-
get that first consent, then you're good for the life of the kid that's in
So we can
services.
assume would be maybe.
You can
that
ask.
our-
You can
that our-
always ask a parent and say, hey, and you can always look into the Enrich file and see if it was
Okay.
done. And if it wasn't, you can always pull it up and do it at the
Alright.
annual. All right, so for consent for reevaluation, this is where you would kick off that reeval. We did that together on the first day. Consent to invite agencies, we talked about that. Remember at the 15 plus, in order to get DVR or an outside agency to come, you have to have that consent for invite agencies. Consider eligibility, you would never use to this add action. You always do it through START program. Details discipline incident report, we don't use that because we track all our discipline through IC. Eligibility determination, again, don't pull it from add action because it'll automatically kick out. You saw how it kicked out, okay? The functional behavior assessment, this is where you get it. The IEP amendment PWN, you saw me do that one. You're going to do that if you need to amend. Initial evaluation extension, we went over this yesterday, actually on Monday. What's the one legal disability category you can ask for an initial extension for? Only one? What? SLD. Specific learning disability is the only legal one that you can ask for that initial extension for because you need to have that big body of evidence. And then we have initial evaluation, reeval. You don't want to use it from here. It'll kick out automatically. Part C to B, you don't worry about. Annika does. Manifestation determination. What is the rules around manifestation determination? I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page with me. When do we do a manifestation determination? 10 days. Is it 10 consecutive days? Nope. 10 days. 10 days. What if the student is in a referral process? Do they have the same rights? Yes, they do. What if they have a 504? Same rights? Yes, they do. What if he's not SPED and he's not a 504, but you suspect the kid has a disability? Same rights? Yes, they do. The kid doesn't even have to be on in SPED to get a manifestation right if this team suspects a disability. Interesting. We've had several cases. LRP, have you had one of those cases before?
I came from in Michigan. There was a kid that did something really stupid within the last month before graduation, and they were going to go for expulsion. And the mom claimed of having some type of disability or something like that. So
the only legal legs to stand on is if someone else in that school also suspected that disability.
Exactly. But I mean,
he's just kind of quirky. He might be
what I'm
disabled. Oh, he all of a sudden gets manifestation rights.
Exactly. So,
right,
yeah.
It does. And I don't know if that case came from Michigan that I read in LRP.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was something I learned this year. I was like, really? Suspected disability? Wow. Who would have thunk, right? So what happens if the student does not manifest and they get expelled? When does expulsion services need to happen? Does anybody know that answer?
what was the question?
When does expulsion services need to happen?
Isn't it day one?
11th day.
Oh, the 11th day.
Bingo. Yes, and we are required to provide expulsion services for kids with disabilities to address their IEP needs and goals and services. We have expulsion services in this district, but typically you're going to do that within your own school. Okay?
Can I ask a really silly question?
Go for it.
What's an ALP?
An ALP is an advanced learning plan. That's for our gifted and talented students. And sometimes we have twice exceptional students that might be on a 504 and an ALP or an IAP and an ALP. So that does happen. We don't handle the ALP piece.
So the kid that I picked randomly happens to have both a health condition and a ALP. Should I just go pick another kid?
For your initial?
For my faux IEP?
That's fine. Doesn't matter. We're just playing in the training site. Doesn't matter.
Okay, so I don't have to address any of the health things that are in here, or the ALP that's
You're doing an initial, right?
Right.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just looking at how you fill out the forms. Okay, so we did manifestation. Meeting participants, we don't really use that because we use that standalone meeting. We talked about the other, which is that standalone meeting. Notification of Medicaid benefits, giving those rights to the parent. Part C to B referral, that's Child Find Early Childhood, and she will talk to you about that. And then prior written notice of special action, we were required to give notice if a student will be graduating or aging out of the system during that year, so we have to provide that. And those high school folks, you get to do another fun thing to do besides the prior written notice of special action. You get to do that second to the bottom one, summary of performance. It's like an 8 to 9 page document. It's long. It's a summary of everything they've done in SPED, so they could take it to their employer or take it to their college and say, these are my accommodations, these are the things they're good at. It's a long process. We usually do it in the second semester, the kids graduating. Prior written notice of special action is, here's another PWN, Jamie. This one is a really good PWN. If you don't know where to document, and where to put stuff, you can always do a PW and a special action. We make it automatically kick out when you staff a student out. When you find that student no longer eligible, you have to do a prior written notice of special action to say, this is a refusal to place in special ed anymore because he no longer qualifies. If you're doing a change of placement, you need to do a prior written notice of special action. It's just a meatier, heavier weighted PWN to really capture those pieces. So that's why they'll kick out when they need to. Jamie?
I just had a situation with a parent. Well, it was started with the child and just flat out refused to receive services for speech and language. And parents were like, well, whatever he wants, we don't think he needs it. So I was not his primary disability. So I at least talked them in to let me at least keep an eye on him and move him to consult instead of direct services. So this is what I did.
So that's fine. The prior written
That's
notice
right.
of special action is probably appropriate, but you're also going to have to amend the IEP and do
And
an
I did.
IEP amendment PWN.
Right.
So you could just do the IEP PWN
Oh, no,
amendment.
I only did the amendment. That's what I did, not the, okay. I did
So
the.
you did the PWN and you talked about what you changed and why?
Yeah, and
then that
per
should be
parent
enough.
request and document it all, okay.
That should be enough. Yep. What Jamie brings up is another question. We don't have a revocation form in here. When a parent says they want to revoke services, they must put it in writing. An email will not suffice. If they write an email, I always have parents sign the email. It has to be in writing that they want to revoke services. We have a letter that we send from the district, and it's in our resource manual. And I can show you where that is in the resource manual later. It'll walk you through the steps. Make sure it's in writing. Make sure you upload that in writing. Then you have to fill out a district letter that you notify them, hey, are you sure you want to do this? Because if you do this, this is what you won't be getting anymore. And therefore, if you want to come back, it's a whole other initial. And we got to go through that process. We send that letter. Then we upload that as well. And then we end special ed.
Okay, and I was also told on this that I couldn't, it was an all or nothing.
That's correct. We are an all or
so
none service.
explain that, because I think that that's interesting. I did not ever know that.
Because we are not a buffet, as I said. You can't pick, parents can't pick and choose services. We're a special
Even
ed
though,
team
like,
that recommends.
What if there was like one, so special ed is you either choose special ed or you don't choose. And
That's
because
correct.
speech and language may be its own disability within that, like he was identified with a specific learning disability as primary. And then second, there was a secondary disability of speech and language on there. He can't refuse that one without refusing it all.
Correct.
Okay.
If the IEP team sat down and they said, this
I
student
understand it when
has
it's
all
looked
these
at
pieces.
as related service, but where it got confusing is when
But if you have a secondary disability, in order to get rid of that secondary disability, you have to hold a whole new reevaluation and not find them eligible for SLI anymore. Now, if it was just a secondary service or related service, then you can hold a whole new annual and say, you know what, he's met all his goals, he doesn't need these services anymore, and therefore I'm going to remove them. And you can do that at the annual, but you can't just remove services when that is their disability category. To change disability category, it's always a reeval. Always. And when we say it's an all or none, here's a team of multidisciplinary team of special ed people that say, this is what your child needs. This is our offer of FAPE. This is what you get to get. We can negotiate pieces that we can say, well, yeah, I can see this and this is how we do it. But if the team says this is what it is, this is what it is. Does that make sense? Annika, you got anything more to add? Okay. All right. So then we have referral special ed. You wouldn't use it from here. Request to release secure information. That's getting information from a third party or doctor or whatever it is. Okay. And then and special evaluation. We talked about that. If I'm looking, would Jamie do a special evaluation at that time to remove this SLI label? Will a special evaluation let you do that? No, you have to do a try. Thank you. Special eval is only outside of the IEP process, right? Outside of an annual, outside of a reeval.
Not outside the IEP process.
Not outside the IEP process, outside of an annual or outside of a reeval. It might lead to another annual, And it's usually
eligibility
it's reducing services, maybe adding services, reporting out on progress, but it's not tied to eligibility in any shape of the word. Okay? All right. So student snapshot. So we used to have to come to add action to get a student snapshot, because the student snapshot is what you provide to the general ed people so that they have that accommodation. As of January of this past year, it's embedded into the IEP. So you don't actually have to go to add action if it was an annual that was created after January. It's embedded, and I'll show you really quick where that is too. I got rid of the student snapshot transfer data. You don't actually see that in your list in production. Summary of performance is that 7 to 10 page whatever document that all seniors have to have. And then here is the transportation form, if you're filling out that special ed transportation form. That's all the add action points. Let me show you where the IEP snapshot is real quick. I'm going to go back to my friend Mary Jo. If I open up the IEP, it's going to be on the left navigation side right next to documents. So when you print the whole thing, it actually will print off. Do you see where it says student snapshot there? It's already embedded in the documents of the IEP. Okay? So you don't actually have to go to add action. You might on older IEPs. Has everybody got their kit open with 3 tabs? If you don't mind going to your summative assessment that says about the transfer out of state, that's what we're going to be doing. Transfer out of state. I think it just says practice transfer.
Within state?
Yeah, I'm going to show you the out of state one.
There isn't, I don't see one on here.
We're going to use the same dates.
Okay.
We're going to use the same dates. The out of state one is harder. That's why I want to do it together with you. And once you do this one, then the in-state one's a piece of cake. Again, we're starting here. Where do you think I want to pick? Which one of these buttons do I want to pick? Start program, yep. It's how you always kick off special ed for a kid that's either doing an initial or doing a transfer, is always start program. So I'm going to click on start program, special education, and now the item is transfer from another state. Is everybody with me so far? So special education, transfer from another state, and then we click next. Now, when I used to train this before, I actually gave you a fake IEP from Jeffco, but it got really confusing and we got so muddled in the content that I just said, we're just going to be looking at the date piece, because the date is what really screws up people. Right, Mark? Mark has had to clean up some transfers from his team, and I guarantee that after this training, you might have to go back and clean up some transfers from your team, because people do it wrong all the time. I'm going to tell you that straight up, and it gets you into hot trouble with compliance, because they're not doing the dates right at all. All right, so let's do the service district. This is an I do, we do. We're doing it together. So the service district is our school. Now, Hope Online. Who's it? Donna, you're Hope Online. So you are the only one that picks different service, our home districts, okay? So service district is Douglas County, and that is the same for Hope Online too, because you're servicing the student. Service school, you can pick any school. I'm going to pick Northridge, because that's where the student is. So I'm going to pick Northridge. Okay. Home district, for you, Donna, you'll pick the home district that the kiddo belongs in. So for you, if I picked Academy 20, if you notice, it just says other, Hope Online, other, because we don't know the name of the school, so we're just going to put other, instead of having all those lists of schools. But
How does this work with center-based?
This doesn't, if the student transfers from another state, it doesn't matter. It's always home district and service district is the same. So for us, everybody else, we're going to pick Douglas. And the school is also the same, Northridge, for me. I don't know what it is for you. Yeah, our home district is Douglas. But for Hope Online, for Donna and Scott, right? when you guys do transfers, they service almost every district in the state. So those kids come from all over, and they live in that home district of Academy or wherever they are, but the service district is Hope Online. Okay, so name of the school district from which you're transferring from. So you can make up one. I'm just going to say Jeffco. Whoa, I went a little too far. Oh wait, I'm not saying Jeffco because that's out of state. Out of state, I'm going to say Alaska. Alaska School District. All right. So from that transfer that you've got, you're bringing in that transfer, and it's going to ask you, what was the date of the eligibility or evaluation from Alaska? And so let's pick, what did our transfer dates say on there? We're going to use those same dates.
Oh, right here, date of evaluation, eligibility was 1/12/2013.
All right, we're going to use that. We're going to use 1/12/2013. So that was the date of the evaluation, and you can type it in 1/12/2013. Okay? So the first question that we ask ourselves after we've read through that IEP from Alaska, and trust me, it's hard to sometimes grab an IEP. It might take some time. And unfortunately, when a kid transfers into our building, we need to have a transfer meeting within 3 days, or at least contact the parents and say, hey, we got to have this transfer meeting. Sometimes it's ugly because we don't have paperwork, and so we try to do the best we can to get this transfer going, to get services going. You may not be able to finalize this transfer until you get all of these other pieces, but you at least have to have a transfer meeting, try and get as much information from the parent and the kid. All right, what did special ed look for you? And then calling, right, calling the school. I need those forms, and calling the district for records. I need these right now, okay? Mom, do you have a copy? Great, can you bring it in? If you can't get it from there. All right, so you look at it, and then you say, does it meet the eligibility standards of Colorado? Okay? Now, some states, they should be by the end of January of 2015 is the federal reg, I think, limit. But they might be sitting on old criteria names. That doesn't mean that they don't meet our criteria, because we can still accept it. But you have to look at the eligibility and the criteria that they used and say, okay, so we don't have physical disability in our state anymore, but a lot of states still have physical disability. We can't deny it just on the fact that it's a physical disability. We need to look at their evaluative data and go, do I agree that this student has a physical disability? And under our other health impairment, does it match those? Would we say here in our state, yeah, that would be OHI. If you can say yes, you answer yes, you accept the eligibility. But if you can't, and I had some transfer from Florida, they found this kid eligible for SLD, and she was an IQ of 56. Not going to be an SLD kid. She had low adaptives. I'm like, what? I know people are slow in Florida, but really? And I can say that because I'm from Florida. Okay, not picking on Florida, I'm from Florida. So, if we look at it, if I say no, then it's going to ask me, when's the IEP meeting scheduled for? Because we say no, I can't accept that eligibility, what do I have to do? I got to go to a reeval, right? Here's a good question. What if that eligibility is way old? Like you got this IEP and that state really screwed things up and should have had a reeval, but that reeval is way old. Like it was due 4 years ago. What do? You have the reeval. It's not ever initial, it's a reeval. Even if it's expired, you still have, once a kid's in, either they die or revoke or staff out are the only ways out, okay? So what you have to really realize is it's not an initial, it's just, I got to hold a reeval as soon as possible. So you got 60 days to get that in. So if I'm saying no, then the date the IEP meeting is scheduled for, when should I pick a date for that? If I'm going to not accept the eligibility and I'm going to hold a re-eval, set that out for how long? 60 days. So you would go from the day you had that transfer to 60 days, and that's when the IEP would be scheduled for, okay?
But we're
And
not saying no, right?
we're not going to say no. I'm going to let you choose yes or no. I'm going to go, Jamie's going the easy route. I don't blame you.
You don't accept and say no, you still going to provide services?
Yes, you still have to provide services, you're right. But you have to provide services as an interim plan until you have that reeval. Andy?
Okay, so accepting the disability is not the same as accepting all of the.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Okay.
You're getting, yep. So, yes, thank you. So let's not go the hard route. I'm with Jamie. Let's say we are going to accept the evaluation. Now, the second question from out of state is, all right, so I agree they're OHI. I agree that they are this. Now, so is the eligibility adopted by our district? Yeah, okay, they meet standards, we agree from the district. So I'm going to say yes again. And then they ask me this question: has the team agreed to adopt the IEP? So you can accept the OHI, but they might have all sorts of stuff in there that I can't provide. So I can either say yes, adopt, or no, adopt. If I say no, adopt, what is my requirement? Hold an IEP, right? How long do you have?
30 days.
You have 30 days, right. You have 30 days. Our district, here we go, Jamie, best practice. Best practice in our district is they want you to do it within 15 school days, which is 3 weeks. So it's close, but 30 days legally is reasonable time that the state uses as a guideline, okay? 30 days, you must have a new transfer. Rebecca?
So we've been working on these a lot, you and I.
Yes?
And we have seen basically no transfers have the IEP within that 30 days.
Yes.
Most of the ones we've looked at.
So you got to make sure you remember to have that transfer. If you say no to adopt, you got to make sure you go back and have that new IEP. Because it's not going to remind you in the system. You got to remember when you're at that transfer, oh, I didn't adopt, I better hold this new IEP by then and put it on the schedule right away. So you know to hold it. Andy, question?
So the LRE,
Go ahead.
So the least restrictive environment, I'll repeat it.
that is not part of this still.
Right, we still haven't talked about the LRE yet. We haven't talked about the services yet. Okay, we're only talking about the content of the IEP, and basically that is the LRE, part of it, but it's the goals and the services that you're in, accommodations that you're looking at. When you say I'm going to adopt, that means I can get really, really, really close to this. I might have to tweak a little bit of services, but I'm not changing the LRE. I can still meet that student's needs and the accommodations and these pieces. I'm just going to get really close. I might do a little bit of interim services differently, or I'll do my services a little differently, but I'm not going to change it so the fact that I'm changing the LRE. The goals have to be exactly copied. The only exception that you can change the goal is if they have a specific program or software or something that we don't have in our district.
And we're not supposed to name anything.
Right. So you can change and omit that part of the goal, and you can change it to be able to provide that service for that kid and work on that goal. That's the only exception that you have to change the goal. If not, you have to rewrite it exactly like it came in.
So don't adopt the one-on-one.
So,
Unless you're paying for it.
so right, definitely that's a big no. No one-on-one pairs. All right, so if we say yes, we agree to adopt, then this IEP goes forward,
What are the
okay?
grounds to,
So you get an IEP that says, oh yeah, this person's got a one-on-one constant para,
Right?
and you're like, oh, that's not going to happen.
Then no adopt. Then you
And-
have an IEP meeting as soon as possible.
Okay, and
And your interim services and all that stuff will not include a one-on-one.
okay,
Because that's the offer of faith we have for our district coming into our school.
okay.
But we can still meet the students' needs, and this is how we're going to do it.
I have another question. If you do adopt,
Get creative.
if you do adopt an IEP, say the date is 9/2/14, September 2nd, 14. What's the next thing you're going to see as a due date.
Oh, we're going to go through those dates. Yep, we're going to go through all those dates. All right, so I'm going to go work through some scenarios with you. So if I said no here, then the IEP meeting schedule would be how many days out for not adopting an IEP? 30, okay? So then you would put it in there. So if I say yes, I'm adopting, then it's going to ask you when are services going to be started. So when is our, looking at our summative assessments, what did we say services will be started? 8/13, okay? So let's put services will be started 8/13. Okay, we're going to talk about that. Because services start in my building in August. This kid transferred in with an IEP from that date, but they came into my building and I'm starting services to them in August when I have that transfer. Okay? So let's go to this date section. So transfer date. Transfer date is the date the kid walked in your building, came to your school and registered. Okay, what is our scenario for our dates? August what? August 12th is the day they walked in? Yes. Yes, they walked into my building August 12th, and that same day I was able to have a transfer meeting. So I came in August 12th, they walked in my building, and the counselor came and got me and said, Jennifer, here's Mr. So-and-so, we need to have a transfer. And the parent walked in with an IEP that I had in my hand from Alaska, and I reviewed it really quickly, and we had a transfer meeting on August 12th. Okay? That's what those 2 dates are. Walked in your building. Sometimes they walk in your building and you don't get to them until 3 days later. Okay? Then that would be 3 days later. Current IEP start date. Oh, you had a question?
Well, you said that would be 3 days later. So let's say they walked in on the 12th, but you didn't get to them until 3 days later.
Yeah, so then you would have 8/15 as your date.
Okay.
That's fine. So the current IEP start date, that's the date from the old IEP. So Mark, would you help me with this? So Mark and I are fixing one of his transfers that his team did. So he's going to his transfer, his old IEP from Cherry Creek. This is an in-state transfer. His team did all the dates wrong. So he has to fix them. So the current IEP date is Mark's going to look on that and he's going to go, when was this IEP last written? And on his, he found it was May. The team put in
July 1st.
July 1st. Nice. Totally wrong. Okay? So he's going to change that to May because that IEP was written in May. When is our fictitious one written? When was the IEP written? January 12th, 2013. Okay. And that is expired, isn't it? Mm-hmm. They should have written it last January and they didn't, but that's okay. If they came in expired, we have to write that. So honestly, let's pretend that it's not the 13th, 2014. Let's change that to the 2014. January 2014. Let's look at our, can I see that real quick?
Let's see a current.
They don't,
It doesn't
you
have
just
current.
have one.
Oh, let's write one on there. I'm sorry, I didn't change that because we just got a new transfer and that's why. So everybody write on your summative, please. Write on your summative, current IEP date will be January 12th, 2014. Because if it's expired, we can't adopt it. So current IEP date, the last date that this IEP was written was January 12th of 2014. So in Alaska, they wrote it in January. And he's transferring into my building in August. Okay? Everybody have the same dates I have. 8/12, 8/12, and January 12th, 2014. Everybody have those same dates?
Except the current IEP start date is 8/13. Yes?
No. That IEP wasn't written in August. It was written in January up in Alaska.
So that date of evaluation and eligibility determination?
We're not there yet.
No, that's above it.
Oh, yeah, that would be January 12th, 2013. That's when they last did it, the evaluation.
And the services were initiated 9/12/13.
8:13. We said we were going to start the services for the kid the day after our transfer meeting.
So I'm confused. So this kid, so he's written in there and it's expired. But have they walked in the building in August?
So they're walking into our building in August, yes.
Okay, 'cause
They're walking into our building in August, on August 12th.
And they've got this out of date paper.
They gave me the IEP, and the IEP I looked through, and they wrote the IEP in January of this past year, the 2014. His last re-eval they held back in January of 2013.
Okay.
That was his last re-eval. His current IEP is January of 14. And we had the transfer meeting on the 12th, and we sat down, we said, you know what, we can start services tomorrow, which is 8/13, is why we started initiating the services the day after the transfer. Date initiated services, August 13th of 2014, because that's when he moved into our building,
I
and
just
we're
wanted to
starting
clarify, I
services.
thought the kid walked in and it was weeks. I didn't realize it was over the summer. And
Yes,
It was, okay.
yes. Thank you for that clarification. So now, what's the start date of this IEP? Because let's just think about it. Don't look at your form. Just let's logically think it through. He walks into my building August 12th. I hold the transfer meeting, and I say, great, we'll start services tomorrow. So when's the start date of this IEP?
Transfer date is the 13th, right?
Yeah, transfer date's the 12th. That's the day he walked in, and I had the transfer meeting.
8:13.
8:13, that's when I'm starting services, right? The start of services is the same date as the transfer date. You see how people get confused on this? Walks in my building August 12th. I have a transfer meeting the same day. I say, she hands me the IEP. His last re-eval was in January of 2013. His last IEP was January of this past year. I sit down and go, yep, I can do this, great. I'm going to start services tomorrow. So now the start date of the IEP will be also tomorrow, right, August 13th.
I have a question. Who all has to be at that transfer meeting?
It just can be me, as myself and I don't, I'd like to get the parent there or the student, but it doesn't have to be.
But no other team members.
Okay, now this will be the fun part. This is where teams screw up. I'm going to stop. Does everybody, Andy, John, you have these same dates so far?
I can't see that.
Okay, 8/12, 8/12, 1/12, 8/13 so far. Do you have all those? And then services start date is 8/13. Everybody with me? Because this is where it's going to get a little crazy. So the system, the way the system builds it, is it automatically populates off to that start date. But we know that's wrong because we're starting our services in 8/13. We've adopted that IEP that was written in January. So just forget all the stuff we're doing. If it was written in January, when does that IEP expires? January of 2015. People are not, do you see how it automatically populated August of 2015? That's wrong. That IEP does not go all the way to August. That IEP goes to January. So we have to reset. And our people keep forgetting to reset that date. That's why we're in troubles. Is because they don't ever hold the IEP in January. And they realize, oh crap, I was supposed to hold that IEP in January. Because they never reset it here. So we have to reset it to January.
For the next review or the...
Both of them. Right, so we have to say it's going to be due 1/11. It's always one day before it's due, so we can finalize it and get services going. There's no gap in service. And 1/11/2015. That's an Enrich issue that they have.
Are they working on it?
Because no, they're not working on it. This is as good as it's going to get. Because other districts never start their services in August. They just carry on and they put the old date of the IEP. And our district's like, no, we're not responsible for what happened from January to August. He just walked in my door in August. I'm not going to be responsible for what happened then. My services start August 13th. So we're not comfortable with that. What will happen, John, which I'm really excited about, is that next year, we're still piloting it, but next year, we won't ever have to do any transfers. They will, except for the out-of-state ones. All the in-state ones will come in electronically. And Hope Online will be super happy about that, won't they? Yeah.
So they'll come in electronically from.
As in a full IEP from the other districts in our state.
And so if those people don't know how to write their IEPs, it's going to transfer in and.
It'll be all right. It'll be all right.
It won't populate into our new information, will it?
It won't, we won't even have a transfer to do. It'll just come in as their IEP. It'll just come in as their regular IEP, no transfers. And all we're going to do is amend it to say this is where we're starting them. It'll be a good savings. We'll work on that. What?
August.
I hope. They were supposed to have it ready this August. They didn't. All right, so now, what was our latest evaluation date? When was his last reeval?
1/12.
1/12 of 2013. Okay, so let's put that in there. And it automatically resets the correct date. Did yours go to 1/11/2016?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so that's right. And hit save, save and save often.
So Enrich would finalize this with those incorrect.
Yes, they
Enrich
will.
would finalize
Yes,
with
they
the
will.
incorrect plan.
Ask Mark.
index.
They sure did finalize it.
Okay.
Oh wait, he hasn't finalized it yet, but yes, it will. That's how we get in trouble. Let's just look at these dates. Kid came in, okay? Came into my building, August 12th. I had the transfer meeting, and I'm saying, I can't do this IEP. Okay? I can't do it. If I say I can't do this IEP, and I'm going to have a new annual, when would my planned end date be? 30 days out. So you're going to pick a date 30 days out for the planned end date and 30 days out for the review. Okay? That needs to be reset to 30 days out. What if I say I can't accept the eligibility? What's my planned end date and my next review date now?
60 days.
60 days out. Okay? Do you see how that can get a little confusing with people
Yeah.
too? They'll forget
Lot
to do.
confusing.
So the planned end date and review dates are tough, but you got to remember to do it. If you do it right, everything else in the IEP goes beautiful. All the goals will set up right, all the services will set up right, everything will be correct, but it's this date section. So that's why, if you notice, I put all that bold guidance. It says, if you are not adopting the IEP, the planned end date 30 days from the start date, or 60 days from the start date. I even put that in there to help guide you, to make sure that you understand those dates, because that's where we've gotten into some trouble. So far, so good? Okay. So let's go down. So we are going to go down to the eligibility determination and consent to evaluate and consent for services. All right, eligibility. It says provide the date of the last eligibility. When was he last reevaled?
January 12th.
Yep.
2013.
Yep. So I'm going to say January 12th, 1/12/2013. Okay? Add a disability. So I want to show you something. If this kiddo's coming from out of state, remember what I talked about? He might be physical disability, or he might be, they might have found that kid in, identified as ID, but they might have used the old significant limited intellectual discapacity, the SLIC, which I hated that label. So the ones that you see that are in parentheses, that's the old disability criteria. So if they're sitting on that old one, you can choose that one with the parentheses, okay? Most districts in our state have gone to the new eligibility criteria. I think there's like 2 or 3 districts in our state that are still using the old ones because they don't want to move to January till they have to. So if you get a transfer, you might have those old disability criteria in it. And so I left them in this pull down so that you can actually pick it. So you guys can pick any disability category you want. Okay, now we come down to consent to evaluate. Now, if you're like me, how many times do you actually get that date on an IEP? I get so many transfers all over the place, I have a hard time finding when the parent signed consent for the last reeval. So if you don't get that consent for the last reeval, just put the last reeval date in, which was what? 1/12/2013. So you have to say yes, and you have to say, so consent granted, yes, and 1/12/2013. Okay? Same thing with the consent for the initial provision of special ed. Are you kidding? This kid's moved all around the country. How am I going to know whenever he got first put into SPED? We rarely get this on a transfer. So again, if you don't get it, put the last reeval, which is January 12, 2013. Is everybody caught up with me?
I have a question.
Yeah.
We were told to get a kid with 3 tabs. That kid doesn't have an IEP. So how are we doing a transfer IEP?
Because the student's coming in with an IEP from out of state.
Okay. So even though I got this kid,
He's going to go to 5 tabs as soon as we finalize this transfer.
Okay, all of a sudden I'm like, I'm
Yeah,
doing
you're doing
the
the right
wrong
thing.
kid.
Panic! All right, so when do we have to provide procedural safeguards to a parent? At the transfer meeting. Okay, so we had the transfer meeting on the 12th of
The
August.
12th of August.
Now, ESY is tough. If you just pick no for here, but if you don't know when that transfer is coming in, I would always pick TBD, to be determined, so you can evaluate that kid and see if regression happens. So either it's a no or a TBD. Rarely will you have any evaluative data to make a decision on a yes for a transfer. Okay, so no. I'm going to say no. All right, so for all the rest of these, I just want you to go through and type the word text. So I got text. You can pick any reporting period you want. By the way, Donna and Scott, you guys are Hope and SVA quarterly. Do you notice you got your own progress reporting period? If you any of you work in EDSD, it's there. Preschool has its own semester, and quarterly's there. Okay, PRA is Platte River Academy. Area need, just picked one goal area and just put in the word text. I'm not making you actually write the goals. I'm only making sure you got dates right. And you notice how, because we got the dates right up at the top, the dates are right in the goal too. So if you get them good on the top, you'll be good throughout the whole IEP. Okay? Accommodation. So why don't you click on, I want to talk to you about validate. So validate is a quickie way to find all the required boxes that have to be filled out. Okay? So I clicked on validate, and now it's saying validate. Problems, you can't finalize this. It's like a pre-finalized check to see that you've got all the things that you need to within that document, okay? And if you notice, when I hit close, it's going to give me all the red areas. I'm unchecking progress monitoring because I don't want to do it. I'm going to go to my next red section, which is assessment participation, and I'm going to click on regular. And the only thing that's required is this box right here. Have the parents been informed? I'm just going to click yes. Just click the yes under the parents been informed.
No, on the assessment participation.
Oh, you don't have to pick anything.
It's red.
It's red. What's red is, keep going. You'll see the only red part is the question that says, have the parents been informed?
Okay.
That's the only actual required piece. Isn't this cool? It's like our little shortcut. Now I click on the next red, I got to add a service. So I want to go to services. Services, one of the things that you'll notice is it says comparable service delivery statement. This is where you can do a little tweaking because you're going to get comparable services as close as you can to those. And so this is where you can say, at our school, we're going to be providing this to meet the needs. This is what we're going to be doing. Okay? As long as you're not changing that least restrictive environment, you're good. If you are changing, it's a new annual, and you can't adopt it. Okay? So let's put the service 1. Just pick any service. Yeah, primary service provider, yeah, put your name in there. Yeah. And if you notice, the services dates are correct too. Again, you did those dates fields correctly, then everything in the IEP will be done correctly too. Okay. When you guys are down to the placement date area, I need you to look up here. To the LRE. So you just need to pick the LRE of the age of the student, and you have to click on Add Placement Date. It's the only thing that will not automatically populate because they don't make assumptions of when you actually are going to start those services. So that's why you have to click Add Placement Date.
And we're all agreeing August
13th.
13th.
There you go. Good job, Andy. All right, so we're all in agreement. I don't know how old this kid is, but I think he's 6. I'm going to pick 6. August 13th will be the placement date. And I kind of want to talk about override real quick. While we have that up, do you see how those minutes are right there where it says total instructional minute per week and it automatically populated 1850? Those are automatically populated each year. Each principal has to turn in their bell schedule to our district student information system person, and he calculates and he tells me all the minutes that are instructional minutes for each school. And then every year I import it into Enrich. So those are based on that school, okay? When we do that amendment, remember we were amending the IEP when we're going to a new school? This is one field that we're actually going to override. You see that word override? So if that kid is transferring to a new school starting August of another year, we'll actually click on that override and put the minutes of that new school in there so the LRE is exactly correct. Yeah?
So what about when you consider lunch, recess? Because most people in school don't know how much minutes there are per...
We got a bell schedule, and those minutes are automatically calculated. You don't have to deal with that. These are the instructional minutes that are provided in that building. And the bell schedules, like lunch, recess, all those, even though some of our kids, we use that time as almost like instructional time, it cannot be counted as state reporting for instructional time. So that instructional time is not counting bells going back and forth, passing periods, and recess and lunch.
The times of bums in seats is. And they will say bell schedule. And
Bell schedule is that instructional time. 1,850 minutes per week is what the instructional time is for this Northridge Elementary. Okay? So you'll have different, Castle Views is very different than Highlands Ranch, is as different as Hope's. It's different. I mean, every school has their own bell schedule.
So what are we changing?
That we would only do the override button when it comes to level matriculation. And you'll get more training on that, but I just wanted to show you where that was when you get that training. Oh, I remember seeing that override button. We're not clicking it now. You never click it unless you're doing that matriculation to a whole different building. If you click override, it just says what are the minutes that you actually want to override. We don't want to override any. And then in your PWN, you just need to put in the words text and put your name in as the case manager. Before I finalize this, there's one more piece that I have forgotten to tell you. So on the bottom, we always have the save, close, finalize, validate, convert on big pieces like the IEP and the transfers, okay? Validate validates everything. We already clicked on that. We know how to finalize. You always want to hit save or close. If you don't hit save or close and you move away and then you try to go back in, it'll say recover changes. Have you guys ever seen that? Mm-hmm. It's because one of your colleagues just walked away from that page or timed out after 5 minutes, left. They had it open, they walked away, answered the phone call, and forgot they were signed in Enrich, and so they got logged out after 5 minutes. And when you go back into the kid, it'll say, recover changes, and you say yes. What happens is, if you were typing away and she timed out, all that wonderful stuff that you did won't be saved. So get onto your people and say, please don't walk away from your IEPs. Hit save or close and get out. The phone rings, hit save or close and get out. Don't walk away from it, because I might be typing on it at the same time. I'm going to ask Rebecca. Rebecca, could you possibly jump into this kid? I want to show them what it looks like. We have what's called a concurrent user. Let me save it first, Rebecca, so that you can jump in with me. The name of the student that I'm working on is Charlotte Lowe. So I'm going to show you what the concurrent user looks like. Charlotte Lowe. Mm-hmm. So we got this really cool system called concurrent user, and you can have as many people as you want working on the same IEP at the same time. Okay? So did you sign in? Are you opening it? All right, see? Do you see what happened right here at the bottom? See that little green button? Mm-hmm. And do you see that RS for Rebecca Schattinger? Always gives your first and last initial. I know now she's editing. She's in there. I know she's working on it. Go ahead and click in one of the fields, if you don't mind, Rebecca. And don't tell me where you're clicking. And start typing in it. Are you typing in it? Now you are. Okay. You're typing in one of the big fields? Type in the accommodations modifications box. Are you in there? Okay. Oh, it's my screen doesn't show it. I don't know if you can see it. It's not showing it because I've got a PC and I'm projecting. But right next to it, it's almost like on the edge of it. You'll see it on yours. But right on the left navigation screen, her little icon is on that area. And do you see how it's highlighted? The box is highlighted. Her box is highlighted. That means she's typing in that box. I can't type in the same box at the same time she is. I could type on any other box at the same time she's typing in that box. You just can't type in the same box. That's why it highlights it for you and it tells you that somebody else is in there with you. So it's pretty cool. So I would often say, when I'm typing along and I'm ready to save or I'm ready to do something, if I want to go save or finalize or whatever, and she's still typing, it'll say, waiting for permission. I can't finalize it until she's done. So it says, stop, you can't do that. I'm waiting to see till she's done with her stuff. It'll stop the process, okay? So that's what the concurrent user is. Now the other thing that I wanted to show you is sometimes we make mistakes and sometimes we pick the wrong version of something. Say, for example, we pick a 6 to 14 IEP, and then we're like, oh crap, the kid's already 14 years old and 8 months, and he's going to turn 15 before his next IEP, and darn it, he has to have a 15 plus IEP, and I've already started writing on some of this stuff, okay? Unfortunately, there's not a lot that converts. I have to tell you that now. It converts beautifully if you're working on a 3 to 5, and you go, oh crap, he's a kindy, and he really should be a 6 to 14. A lot converts there. You will lose a lot going from a 6 to 14 to a 15. But do you see this button on the bottom that says convert? You can actually convert that IEP to the right document. So I've never tried it in a transfer, so let's see what it gives us as an option. So convert, new IEP type. Yeah, it would let me convert that to a transfer in state. If you started typing, oh man, this was supposed to be an in-state, not an out-state, you can convert this whole thing and it'll move it. Don't do it, but it will do it. John?
So if you're converting from the wrong one, how, just read the new one, how do you know what to convert to?
It'll take every field that's the same and merge all the things that you've already typed into that new one.
But if you're in A and you want to be in B, do you be in B and then press convert and it'll copy?
Everything that has the matching fields, it'll copy.
Then will it delete the old one?
Yeah, it will. It overrides it. So while we're looking at this, I wanted to tell you what these pieces are. Converted data, that was when we first went on our system. We took our old IEP system, we converted that data, and brought it into our legacy system. You probably shouldn't see any converted data anymore. You might see some. If you do, I'm going to cry because people should have written an IEP on that kid. So you probably won't see converted data as far as being current, but when you go into view history, you might see converted data. That means it's our old IEP from our very old system, okay? Obviously, there's a 3 to 5 IEP, there's a 6 to 14, there's a 15 plus, and then there's a services plan. Does anybody know what a services plan is? Or you might have heard of it as an ISP.
Transition?
No, that's a 15 plus.
Might have heard of it as what?
An ISP,
Individual service plan.
an individual service plan. You guys ever heard that? So under the law, your school is required, if a parent from a private school comes to the closest school near that private school and says, I want you to test my kid. We have to. Even though we don't serve that kid, we have to test that kid. And so what happens is we go through the evaluation process, and if we find the student eligible for special ed services, they can't have an IEP because they're in a private school. So we write a ISP, which is an individual service plan, okay? So if you see a service plan, that means the kiddo was in private school at one time. It's equivalent to an IEP, except there are no goals on an ISP. It's just services and accommodations, okay? So when a student transfers in with an ISP, it's the same as an IEP. We treat it as an IEP. We would just not accept it because we have to write a new IEP because an ISP doesn't have goals. So any kid that comes to you with a service plan and said, oh, I've got eligibility, I've got this disability, here's my service plan, you go, oh, and in the transfer you would say, accept eligibility, yes, but the IEP, no, and so we'll write a new IEP within 30 days.
The service plan doesn't have any programming though, right? Like student will get 90 minutes a week of instructional support from a learning specialist. It
doesn't from our end. On very rare occasions, we have had to provide services to kids in private school where the parents bring that kid. And it's typically for dual enrolled kids. The parents bring the kid to your site and you provide services. Sometimes it happens, especially with visually impaired or DHH or some extreme cases, SLP, speech language. you might have that piece come in.
Yeah.
And so there is a services section in which we can provide as a district to them, but it's very rare.
Yeah.
Typically, you'll see a lot more private schools are putting learning specialists on staff, but then they still don't write the services section. Yeah.
And it's about the proximity of school, not the home address. If they go to a
So it has nothing to do with the home address. I always thought it had to do with where you live, but it has to do with the school closest to the private school. So my kids attend Regis Jesuit High School, which is in Aurora. I live here in Castle Rock. But if I wanted to get evaluative testing done for my children, I would actually have to go to Thunder Ridge High School for them they would have to evaluate my kid. I don't even live in that district. But because they're the closest school to that private school. So and that's a change. It used to be it used to be your neighborhood school. Where you lived and resided is where the private school testing happened. But they just changed that recently, that it had to do with where they're closest to. Rebecca?
I don't have to repeat this because I'm not Mike anymore.
Okay.
But we don't do we don't write the ISP.
We
provide the testing.
we will start the ISP for that team. Yes, we will. We will start it in this system, and they will write it, because we are sitting in the eligibility, and we'll help them, the private school, do that. We'll start that system for them and finalize it so that we can count the eligibility for us. But we don't maintain that service record. We don't do that piece, but we do finalize that. But they're required to continue with the 504 or the ISP on their own. It doesn't keep getting updated in Enrich. And we actually end up ending SPED on them if they're attending a home school or a private school. Right, so no, if they wanted another one written, that's the private school's responsibility.
So we just do it one time?
That's one time. Yep, it's part of the eligibility process. Yep, and they sign consent for initial placement of special ed too. They go through the whole thing just like an IEP, except when you go to create, where it says create IEP, you don't choose IEP, you choose service plan. Okay? We did a lot. A lot. Good with the transfer, so we're going to finalize this transfer. And then all I have to do is let you do the interim assessment. And I wanted to, while let's see, I'm going to hit close. I'm going to finalize this sucker. Oh, I forgot a measurable goal. Dang it. Text. Okay. And what time is it? 6:30? Oh, we're going to get out early tonight. Yay. Okay. So a couple of things I want to show you before I have you do your interim assessment and send you packing is, if you're in your email, and I believe that Rebecca shared the special ed Google site with you in the first night. So if you go to your special ed, your sites on your email, and then you go to special education, I wanted to remind you where all of the manuals are. So if you hit special education and you go to Enrich IEP on the left side there, the dev website and the production website's there. If you scroll down, you'll see all the manuals. So program basics was the very first thing that we talked about.
Is that what you said?
What's that? Google Sites. Sorry, you go to Sites, yeah.
And we typed in special education?
Yes. She shared it with everybody. You should have had an email from her from Monday night, Rebecca, that says share the Google site with you. I'm sorry. The manuals are on the special ed Google site. So from your email, I'm going to do that again. So from your email, you're going to go to the boxes, and then here on the right side where it says sites, you click on sites. I've bookmarked mine, but if you search for special education and search, it'll come up with this one right there, special education. and it'll look like that. It'll be green. Type in capital S, special, capital E for education, and in the blue part, it should get that site for you.
It's like going
And in there, I wanted to show you, there's a lot of resources here. Do you guys all get the SPED notes every week that has like updates? Then we have audiology. These are all the teams that provide services, so you can have that. On the left side, you'll notice where it's the recent SPED notes, but it's also Enrich IEP program. And of course, all your forms for Section 504 are also there. But if I were to click on Enrich IEP, it'll bring me to the site, and you just scroll down to the actual manuals. Okay? I wanted to show you in the Program Basics manual, this is what it looks like. And every manual has a table of contents that says what's in that manual. So if you're trying to figure out, oh my gosh, how do I do a matriculation meeting? How do I run a report? Which we haven't done. I probably have got to do that with you guys. How do I attach a file? What if parents revoke services? Remember how I told you there's a sheet here? If I click on the parents revoke services, it brings up the slide that talks about the revocation letter. Remember I told you there's a district revocation letter? If you click on that link, it'll actually open up the revocation letter that you have to send home that informs the parents that they have to start the whole process all over again. Okay? But going back to the table of contents, there's a link back to the table of contents for each. Slide, which I have to figure out why it's not letting me do that. And the most important thing I wanted to point out was FAQs. So the very first manual has my FAQ slide. And these are slides that I have created, and then Rebecca's going to keep maintaining. Okay? So in the FAQs, it's frequently asked questions that I've gotten, like, what do I do if a student withdraws or moves away? How do I end their special education? A student's transferring in with an expired reeval or annual. What do I do? I can't finalize the document. I can't finalize the IEP because it says I don't have consent. The program says that it's still due, but I reset it. What's happening? All my FAQs are there. So if you're running into stuff, go to the manual first. See if maybe the answer is there before you shoot off an email to Rebecca. Okay? All right. Couple more things. I wanted to show you End Special Ed. So the kids moved, right? I'm going to click End Special Ed. In order to end special ed, you got to make sure that they are red in IC. Red means the kids moved away from and is no longer enrolled in Infinite Campus. So you always go to Infinite Campus first, make sure that they've moved, make sure they're red. Then you go to their enrollment area and you look to see what's the date the registrar actually disenrolled or withdrew the kid. That's the date you're going to put up here for end date. Okay? It has to match from IC. And then the end status is whatever IC says the end status is. So if the kid moved, transferred to public school in a different school district in Colorado, or moved out of state, or if you staffed them out, it'd be transferred to regular ed. Initial did not qualify. We didn't qualify that kid. GED transfer, graduated. All the students that have graduated, you have to end as well. Transfer to home-based, transfer to private school, non-public school. There's lots of reasons why you would end special education. All it's doing is it's closing that record. It's not staffing them out, although that's one reason why you would end it. It's just closing that electronic record for them. Rebecca?
I was not paying attention. Did you say to delete all the team members?
Right, I'm going to talk about that. So one of the things that you have to do before you end SPED is you have to delete team members. So, and there's a trick to this too. So I'm going to go to Jenkins, because I think she had some team members on there. So let's say Jenkins moved. I have to go to Manage Team. And I want you to see, on the IEP, I've got Debbie Provo, and I got Debbie Provo down here. If I click on Manage Team and I delete Debbie Provo here, and you'd think that she's gone, right? But look, her name still shows up. Oh, wait, it did it this time. Usually their name still shows up, and you have to go back to team members and delete again. It's a ghost character. I think it went away because he's administrative approval. But other ones, it definitely, you have to go back and delete again. So you have to delete all the team members, because remember, what did I say? The team members, if your name's on the team member list, what comes up for you? Deadlines, right? If you don't delete yourself from that kid's set, guess what? You're going to keep getting deadlines. And it keeps saying it's overdue. And you're like, wait a minute, I already ended this kid. Well, you never deleted your name from the team member list. So you're going to keep getting those reminders that they're overdue, even though the kid's left. So you got to delete your name before you end SPED. Okay? Last thing, reports. Everybody go to your home page, please.
Homepage of it, right?
Yes, homepage of Enrich. On the home page, you have a section that's called Reports. It's on the bottom right-hand side, and it'll say Create, Manage Reports. I want everybody to click on that. Scott, you might want to see this. So go down to your home page and then Reports, and you want to click on Create, Manage Reports. And if you opened up the shared with me, the plus sign, I'm going to open up my saved reports because I'm the one that wrote them. So just go with the shared with me, you guys do. You'll see a ton of reports. And to run these reports, all you have to click on is the blue line, and it'll actually bring up that piece. Okay? So some of the reports that you might want to run are, if you want to find all the students with autism and SED in your school, you can run that report. You can do a BIP report. And if see that little star next to it, if you click on the star, it now becomes your favorite, and it's sitting there on your home page. So the BIP report might be important to Scott because he might want to run that BIP report to find out how many students have a BIP in his school. And so he would just click on the BIP report, and I'm going to pull in, hold on a second, I'm going to do it. So I'm going to run it for Scott. I'm going to do Douglas County School District. I'm going to pick the school district.
You want to do high school?
And I'm going to do the Hope Online High. And I'm going to run a report. And so now I got a list. These got 11 kids on a BIP. And it also comes up, what?
These aren't current, right?
No.
Okay.
This was a copy in August. Why do you think they're more or less?
Well, it was just some names I didn't recognize. They just keep kind of all of a sudden.
You might want to run this
popping up.
report in the real thing.
Well, I've done it before.
Oh, you have? Okay.
Yeah, so.
So the cool thing about reports, so he's now found out he's got his list of BIPs, right? But say this isn't very user-friendly. He can't use this and manipulate this data. So if he wanted to, he can say, I want to turn this into a Google Doc or something, a spreadsheet for me. So if you go to the very top, do you see where it says export? He can click on export, and it'll export this to an Excel sheet. So then down here on the bottom, it's going to open up this CSV. Now CSV is like alphabet soup, so we're going to save it as like an Accent document. Okay, it's going to open up Excel document. So it's going to open up the same list that we got, and I can double click on my different headers to be able to read it. I'm just double clicking on my Excel sheet. And if I wanted to keep this, I do a file, always do a save as, Because if you save it, it's going to save it as the CSV gobbledygook that you can't read. See how it says CSV? You have to do the save as and change it to workbook. And now you have a Excel sheet that you can work from. Okay? Now that's going to be helpful for Scott, but it may not be helpful for you because you're not running BIPs maybe. But let's go back to the reporting. Some of the reports that might be very helpful to you is we had everybody in the beginning of the school year run the due dates for students report. Of course, this one might be important for you, Andy, DHH services per school. So you have disability count, but these due dates for students or due dates for team leader. So if you put your name in as team leader on all your kids on the programs tab, if you ran that report, you'd only find your caseload and all the due dates that they have, like their next eligibility, the reeval. But if you run this due dates for students, you'll get every student in your school. Okay? And then ESY by district, goals by student. If you want to kind of drill down and look at some goals, you can look at hearing impaired, ID, Medicaid. You can do OHI. You can do it by different things. You can say SED. Services report with due dates is good, especially when we're heading into December count. So that's one I really want you guys to run in production. I want you to run the services report date because when you run this, you'll see to make sure that every child has been assigned those service providers so we get all the money that we really should be getting. And if there's no assigned provider on there, it'll clue you in and you'll be able to go back to that kid's IEP and assign the right providers. Andy?
And which one is that? The
services report with due dates. Yeah.
At my school.
Uh-huh.
And there was a form that we had to fill out.
Yes, that was the case manager checklist.
And who was that form supposed to go to?
Either Rebecca or me, but now Rebecca, yeah.
And then, so I ran my report to make sure that I was on what I should be on.
Okay.
And Susan's on many things, and you can't take her out.
You can take her out.
You can't. Where it says add a provider.
Right. And then you select your provider because her name's not there. So unfortunately, you're going to have to go in and manually change those yourself on each IEP.
Well, I changed him for like the
primary team.
But then when I run the report, it still says her name.
For the primary. Probably.
Well, now it says both of us because I added me, and so now she and I are team.
So I would go back in admin edit and change inside the IEP. I would change it to your name.
I did, and that was what I was saying, it wouldn't stick, but now I've got him to stick.
Okay, good.
When you run that report, Susan's still in there.
So you got to drill
okay,
down and
right?
find out where, no, it's not okay. If she's still in there, as far as that, you need to take a look and make sure it's not. If you're stuck on it, email Rebecca, she can help you with that.
Okay.
You can also run a transportation report to find out how many kids are getting special transportation. I mean, there's lots of different reports. All you have to do is click on them. You can make your own, you can save them, you can share them, you can do whatever. If you feel like you got a report that you really want that's not there, email Rebecca and she'll help you create the report you want, okay, that you want to drill down data. Okay, so let's do our interim. So let's go back to that first email that Rebecca shared with you on Monday. That was the email about the, it was, what's that? No, yeah, it was the differentiated, the SPED nuts and bolts. It should be in your drive. It's called SPED nuts and bolts Enrich differentiated. That's what it should look like. It's this one that we did the SPED, we have stage 1, 2, and 3. And you're going to fill out the interim. We're actually going to do it a little bit together. I want to go over answers with you a little bit quickly to see how you would do on your formative, to see if you learned anything in these past 3 days. SPED, it's look in your look in your drive for SPED, nuts and bolts, Enrich, differentiated. Yes, it says stage 1. Mm-hmm. So this was the formative you guys took. And this is the question you answered on Monday. So who's required to be at a reeval? This is the one you guys did on Monday.
What day was Monday?
You took this when you first logged in. This is the first thing you guys did. No, that's the summative assessment. That's not the same.
It's not the same.
No, it's this one that you need. It's this differentiated. It says SPED, nuts and bolts, Enrich, differentiated. It looks like this, stage 1, 2, and 3. No, you didn't make a copy of it.
But it was that first.
It was the first email she sent you that says,
Invitation to view?
yeah,
Okay.
invitation to view
But we
SPED.
need to make a copy.
Nope, don't
No?
have to. It's just, you're going to follow the link for the survey. It should look like this when you pull it up. And the question is, what ahas did you have regarding the IEP process? List 3 things. 3 things. And you don't have to do this right now. You could do it later tonight if you want. But while you're here, you might as well finish it. But it's like, what ahas did you have about the process? A lot of people would say, I didn't know I have to get the consent before I can start talking about the IEP. Some people said that. Okay? What ahas did you have regarding this whole program? What areas of Enrich have text assist? Just try and think of some of those text assist areas.